You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast dedicated to the 40 plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Welcome back to the 40 Fit Podcast, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. I'm your host, Coach D, and I'm here with co-host Trent Jones.
Hey, good morning, y'all.
And we are going to talk today about the stress recovery adaptation model, or how we get stronger, faster, and more enduring. Because really we can apply this model, the general adaptation syndrome model that Hans Selye created back in the 1930s. I think it was 1936 that he actually wrote a paper and created this concept on the general adaptation syndrome. And in a nutshell, basically what we're talking about, folks, is this, is that when you physically do something, when you cognitively do something, and you create an activity, it should have a certain level of stressor to your body and to your being that creates you to then need recovery and then allow you to adapt. There has to be a stressor though. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're not going to get too sciencey and get down into the molecular level, the cellular level, the tissue level, the physiology of adaptation, because that really doesn't matter to most of y'all. What really matters is what do I need to do in my exercise program or my training program to be able to receive the rewards or get the rewards that I want to get out of my program. So, Trent and I were just talking a little bit off air about this concept of stress recovery adaptation. And I think my goal here is for our listening audience and our population basically to get the construct, the thought line that if I'm going to have a program of training, and we call it training, not exercise. Exercise is getting hot, sweaty, and tired. It's not programmed to produce a specific outcome, improving one of the 10 general physical skills. And training actually is a program that is specific, it's goal-oriented, and we are targeting one, if not many, at the same time of the 10 general physical skills. And so what we want to do is give you guys basically a thought line or a thought process by which to think about your exercise. There I go, about your training program, okay? About how you work, what kind of stressors you provide, and what kind of outcome or adaptation that's going to have. You see, your body basically has all these different systems, and when you stress your body, you provide some level of work or stress to your body, there then is a cycle of recovery, and then after that cycle of recovery, there then is a cycle of adaptation. And based on where you are in your training program, how well-developed, underdeveloped, overdeveloped, basically where you are kind of determines how long each of those cycles need to be and are going to take.
Yeah, and so without going down the rabbit hole, let's define stress, just real at a basic level. All right,
Yeah.
so stress would be a disruption in homeostasis, right? That's how you might say it in biological terms? Exactly.
A disruption in the status quo. And if your body is sitting at rest and you're not doing anything, or you're just walking around, let's think about it this way. In your daily life, you have certain activities of daily living. Your body has adapted to those activities of daily living, but not necessarily anything outside that realm of reality. So let's say you walk so many miles a day through your work activities, and you sit and you stand and you lift maybe some light things or heavy things, whatever it is. That's why work is not training. It could be considered exercise. Where you could be an industrial athlete. It could be considered exercise, but it's not training. And so you have all these different stressors throughout your day and different activities you perform. And I think cognitively too, you could throw that in there. It's a little different realm, the concepts of cognitive stresses, but the overload principle and the linear progression still applies to your intellect and to your emotions and your all those aspects of your human. But I think that the key here is that if you're going to create adaptation, you have to have enough stress, like you said, Trent, to disrupt that steady state or that status quo or that resting rate, whatever it is. And it's got to be at a high enough intensity and sometimes a long enough duration. So intensity and volume combined, we talk about that a lot in strength training. But today we're really just talking about any of the 10 general physical skills.
Right.
Anything. Strength training is part of that picture. But it has to be at a high enough level to disrupt your rest cycle or your rest state.
Yeah, and I think that's important to define it like that, because you can do things that are subjectively perceived as hard that we would just call physical activity or exercise,
Right.
and then not training, right? So you could go lift a bunch of rocks in your backyard all day, and that might be subjectively hard. It might be difficult. You get hot and sweaty, but that doesn't necessarily constitute a stress in terms of like a training program like we're talking about.
Yeah, it matters totally where your fitness level is.
Right.
If you train 5-6 days a week and you go out and you put a fence in your backyard, that might not be a great enough stressor to create adaptation, an improvement. The adaptation is so generic, it's so out there, but basically that might not be enough stress to create an improvement in one or many of the 10 general physical skills.
Yeah.
And those are strength, power, endurance, speed, agility, flexibility, accuracy, coordination, balance, and mobility. And stamina.
Yeah.
So there we go.
I thought you were going to fall apart there.
No, I got
6 way through.
It's early in the morning and I didn't fall apart. I have not
good.
had my first 16 ounces of Java. But yeah, so basically we want improvement in one of those 10 general physical skills. In getting improvement in those skills, we also acquire other indirect benefits, and we're going to talk about a few of those things later this morning. So yeah, I mean, the stressor's got to be great enough in intensity and volume to get the body to change, basically. So
yeah, thanks for laying that out, because I think a lot of people have a mistaken belief that if they do a lot of just quote unquote physical activity, then they're going to get some results. So we think about going back to your example of the industrial worker, right? The guy who's got a physical factory job. Well, yeah, his level of physical activity is higher, right? And that may net him some
higher fitness-based level.
Some higher fitness-based level.
More strength, more lean mass.
Compared to the desk worker.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But that's not going to get him beyond a small incremental benefit over the general population.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
he still needs additional stress in order to get stronger and fitter, etc.
Yeah. Think about it just from a society standpoint. Think about maybe, let's see, we're in 2019 now. Let's just go back 100 years ago, 1919, okay? Industrial age, starting there. We've got automation. We've got Ford, creating the auto factories in Detroit. We've got all these different things that are happening, gears, motors, all these different advances in human society in regards to conveniences. But at the same time, individuals at that time did more work physically. They had to. It was not purposeful in the sense that they decided to do more work. They were made to. And so things were harder. Farming was harder. Working on vehicles or buggies or whatever they did, it was just naturally harder. So you could make the argument that individuals at that time had a higher lean mass, they had a higher physical function because they were forced to do that. They were exposed to more of that. As we then go into the automation age, and then we go into the computer age and all these different changes in human society. Now we have much lower lean mass rates. We have less able individuals. We have a lot of people that sit all day long. And I love what the way I think about humans is maybe this is awkward, but I think this makes sense in my mind. I don't know if you'll connect with this, but think about a male or female lion. They are predators. Their number one job is to hunt and protect the pride. So the lion wakes up in the morning, early in that morning, and he or she says, if I'm not my fastest, my most cunning, my most powerful, and my most vicious today, myself or my pride might not eat and get protected. Now, not many other animals within the animal kingdom are going to threaten the pride because of their dominance as a predator, right?
Yeah.
But they still have to eat. Okay, so that's their job in the setting. Now, let's take the gazelle. The gazelle is not a predator. It's a ruminant by nature. It eats on grass and everything, and it just grazes in its big herds, right? Mm-hmm. And the gazelle wakes up every single morning. And the gazelle says to itself, if I'm not at my fastest, my most cunning, and my most able, then am I most aware, I'm going to get eaten today, and I won't be able to eat, right? And so there's a different role, but they all serve a natural genetic role within the ecosystem. Well, what about humans? What about us?
Yeah, we're an apex predator.
Yeah.
And therefore, we don't have a lot of threats to our day-to-day existence.
But here's the challenge with this. The real question would be, and I talked to a patient the other day. He sits in an office 10 hours a day. He's a highly successful executive. And I said, do you think you were meant, as a male Homo sapien, do you think you were meant to sit in front of a desk for 10 hours a day? Or sit in front of a computer or laptop or big screens? Mm-mm. Do you think that's the maximum expression of your genetic potential? Now, intellectually, it might be. But otherwise, it's not. And so he has to physically expose himself. He has to purposely expose himself to a stressor outside of that environment that will then improve his physical capacity, that will then improve his body systems. And that is the difference, is that we have to manually and purposefully expose ourselves to enough stressor, and it could be any one of the different systems that we're trying to improve, any one of the different 10 general physical skills that we're trying to improve. But we've got to expose ourselves to enough stressors without overexposing and overtraining, which a lot of people do. There's a balance there, And so, but we've got to do that so that we can improve our physical capacities. And a lot of people, that's just a very foreign concept to them. So a surgeon friend of mine, a guy named Dr. Richard Hankey, he's an orthopedist. He's a lifelong friend, kind of a confidant and one of my mentors in the medical community. One day he said to me, people have to work really hard in their, and he said exercise programs, in their rehab programs until they fail, and then their body recognizes, oh, yesterday I failed. I've got to grow so I don't fail today. I've got to grow and improve. So I got to do harder things so that I can improve so I don't fail today. And that's the way the human body is. The human body, you intervene with some stress. You do something that's stressful, like maybe it's a quick sprint or a run or lifting weights, or it's a longer run, or it's a flexibility issue, or it's a cognitive issue, whatever it is. And then your body goes, oh, wait a second, I failed there. And the physiological response is built off of Hans Selye's principle of then your body has to recover, and it has a series and a cascade of events that occurred then thereafter that are at the cellular level and improve your ability to then adapt. You improve, you gain one in one of the areas of the 10 general physical skills or in other areas, and then you become better. You improve. And that's the whole idea. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, you think about in terms of acquisition of skill, your brain's making more neural connections that weren't there in the first place. If you're thinking about muscle mass, your body is squirting out kind of growth hormone and growth factor that's going to help produce more muscle mass to meet the demands of the physical activity that you've been doing.
Yeah, and there's many different types of adaptation. Let's talk about those. So in a basic sense, there's a neural adaptation. Many times the neural adaptation is a shorter run in regards to how you adapt and its improvement. For example, when you first start lifting weights, the first couple weeks, the loads are light enough, generally speaking, that you're getting stronger. But first couple 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks, based on where you are in your fitness level prior to your intervention, the first period is mostly neural adaptations. I call it developing neural engrams, developing neural adaptation, skill acquisition, learning how to do the movement more efficiently with better form, getting motor sequencing down right, firing motor units and motor neurons when you need to at the right timing, at the right space and time. A good example would be first time you do squats not so bad, deadlift's not so bad. First time you do bench press, your arms are shaking all over.
Right,
and the weight is fairly light. It's your body trying to figure out how to produce force and create a motor sequence in your upper extremities that are fine dexterity. I guess you would say limbs, they have more fine dexterity. And it's you trying to figure out how to sequence that and how to improve that bar path because you're acquisitioning more neural skill, more cognitive skill as you go along. So
So when we say motor units, we're referring to the point at which the nervous system interacts with the muscle cell. Right?
Yeah.
So the muscle
it's
cells
the convergence of all the
contract, but yeah, you've got to have your motor units your brain has to know how to turn them on, and like you said, in what sequence in order to produce the movement.
Right. That's the center of neural activity in the muscle belly. That's the center. That's where nerve activity, bioelectricity, electricity that's in the human body, that's the center of it. You short circuit that, you got problems. And so then there's also muscular development. We have muscular changes that occur. Cell wall gets thicker. The muscle gets more able at transporting energy across its cell membrane, all those different things. There's a better balance. Gets thicker, gets stronger. Sarcomere, which is the functional unit of the muscle, can then slide and glide better and hold on better and tighter. And so there's all those things. Then there's connective tissue thickness. There's connective tissue development. The tendons and the ligaments thicken up. Now, I will say this. This is an interesting aside. I have an older client. He's in his mid-60s. He's trained for a long, long time. He's an unbelievable athlete. I do his barbell programming. And throughout his last year of barbell training, his weights have gone through the roof. He's PR'd everything. But we've had several connective tissue injuries. We had, a really bad adductor tear off the pubis. It was really bad, lots of bleeding. And then we had another one on the other side that was less bad, not as bad. And he and I had the conversation. I just said, you know what? Here's the problem. You've got great hormonal levels. You've got this great athletic genetic ability, but you've also had a lot of junk training in your lifetime. He did some training prior to barbell training that wasn't as conducive to connective tissue health. He overtrained. And I said, you've got some scar tissue there. You've got some adaptive changes in your connective tissue that makes it less elastic, more plastic. It wants to break and pull easier. And I said, your connective tissue just can't keep up with your muscular growth.
Yeah.
And so we have to try to develop a program that will improve the connective tissue health as much as we can improve and accelerate the muscular health. It's very difficult to do. But there's also connective tissue growth, so along the way. Then there's bone growth, so they get increased bone density, increased bone strength. You got osteoporosis, osteopenia, any of these bone problems. Man, train.
Yeah.
Lift, work out.
Yeah, I feel like we don't talk about that enough when it comes to.
We ought to do an episode on bone health.
Yeah, I think we ought to, and talk a little bit about the anatomy and physiology of bone tissue, because I think sometimes the lay people, especially myself, I tend to think of bone as this just static,
it's constantly growing.
Stuff that's just made of mineral, right, in our bodies. But no, it's in fact, it is an organ.
Reproductive cellular structure.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on there. And as it's very vascular, as a result, bone can grow. It can get stronger. It can get thicker, everything.
And it has a genetic predetermined limit on length. And once you leave pubescence and adolescence, and you become a mature adult, bone is not going to get longer and bigger necessarily, even though it can. I mean, Wolff's Law basically says that when you apply stress to the bone that's greater than the bone can tolerate, the bone grows. So here's a very interesting little, maybe kind of gross, but so when I was in PT school, I have 16 hours of gross anatomy dissection, full body dissection, which is fairly unusual. I could almost have a minor in as an anatomist in anatomy and physiology with all my coursework and then with the cadaver dissection. So I had four-hour classes, which would be 3-hour classes and 1-hour lab over the course of my academic career. So I had 2 undergraduate courses of full body, what we would consider beginner dissection. And then I had 2 4-hour classes of full body advanced dissection, where it was really just me and the anatomist that was in the course. There was like 3 of us in the course total. But we basically we worked individually with the anatomist, and I helped him kind of TA the class too. But in that class, I was able to do a ton of full body dissection, where we take the human and we take it from the skin level, and we go all the way down to the bone to all the body systems. Wonderful experience. But in that, I remember dissecting one cadaver one time, and this cadaver had very large forearms, I noticed. And so it was a male. And when we got down to the extensor musculature at the common extensor tendon at the elbow, that would be the thing that raises your palm up, raises your wrist and hand up if your palm is facing down. We call that the wrist extension. And where the gripping muscles all attach. And I was dissecting the forearm musculature away, and his common tendon insertion at the elbow on the radius and on the ulna side, on the medial side, and then also on the humerus was extremely large and bony and spiky and just thick, and you could see where it looked like a little mountain peak. And so I asked my anatomist, I said, hey, can we figure out what these folks' occupations were, their life's work, their occupation? He said, well, we do have some information. So we went in the computer and we realized this guy had worked as a construction worker and a day laborer all of his life.
Oh, yeah.
Slinging a hammer, probably slinging a sledge, whatever, working on crews, and his forearms were overdeveloped, and the bone had grown to adapt to that. And that's a great example of adaptation. Stress, recovery, adaptation.
Yeah.
Now, let's say he swung a hammer too much and he got it too inflamed, and the bone couldn't grow quick enough to adapt the tendon and the what we call the tendo-osteal attachment. Then he could get an inflammatory condition. He could get an itis or inflammation, get tennis elbow. We call it lateral epicondylitis. And then that's where the body's not adapting and there's an abnormal response. There's an injury that occurs. So we want that stress, recovery, and then adaptation. We could also talk about organ development. I mean, your lungs develop. Your vascular system is an organ, so we could talk about vascular development too. That your heart as an organ develops. Your heart muscle becomes stronger as you do lifting and cardiovascular work and stamina work or aerobic work. And then there's also the integumentary system. So you have growth of your skin. I mean, if you're a marathoner or an ultra marathoner, you know that the number one thing that's got to develop over time is your skin's ability to take miles and miles and miles of pounding. Your feet break down, you chafe in between your thighs if you've got a little bit of thighs touching there, underneath your arms. Mm-hmm. If you've never run a long race, I mean, the longest race I've ever run has been a 10K. I've never run a half, but a 10K. And even under my arms where my T-shirt was rubbing my sides was just chafed and raw.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I ran one half marathon in my life, and training for it, I remember, and I don't have a lot of running experience. I've never been a competitive runner. This is just something I did for fun. I remember on one training run, I put a cotton T-shirt on and ran about 9 miles.
Not good.
And the nipple chafage is a huge... I immediately went out and bought a bunch of those Nike, stretch dry fit, the kind of
nipple
thing.
hypersensitivity.
Yes, it was hypersensitive for sure. For a few days,
Yeah, exactly. But I think, all of these systems adapt and they change. And so, again, what our goal here is basically to tell you guys that you... make your programming purposeful. Make your training purposeful. If you're working with a personal trainer or a coach, or you're doing your own program, and you're doing the same thing day in, day out, then you're not training. You're exercising. You might be training at the very first of your program because you are going to get some adaptation, but it's got to be hard. A previous episode was why so hard, It's got to be hard at some point. Now, that doesn't mean there's not ebb and flow and cycles of hard and then easier, and that has to occur over the lifespan or the lifetime of someone training. But at the same time, in other words, I can't do high-intensity interval training every single day and expect to consistently adapt without significant catabolic breakdown. At some point, I have to allow my body to adapt.
Right.
training is just as much recovery as it is stress.
Yeah, and so let's unpack that a little bit because so I think we've made a pretty good case throughout the course of this podcast that, like you said, training has to be hard. And what we're saying today is it not just subjectively hard, that's part of it, right? If you've never trained before in a systematic way, it's going to be subjectively hard.
Sure.
And that's important.
Perceptually, that changes
yes.
over time.
Over time, that's going to change. Not every workout, like you say, is going to be subjectively hard. However, every workout or series of workouts as you get more advanced in your training career has to be hard in objective terms, which is what we're saying when we say stress. It has to still constitute stress. But let's unpack that. So someone that has gotten to what we might call the intermediate level of their training, where they're now they may do, let's say, a heavy workout, whatever heavy means. That might be a hard conditioning workout with its high intensity, or it might be a heavy barbell workout on one day, followed by a light workout midweek and a medium-ish workout.
Sure, that could be endurance training too. Yeah, exactly.
It applies
whatever physical skill we're working.
Whatever modality we're talking about here. Yeah. It's important to realize as an athlete at that stage that, like you say, the stress recovery adaptation cycle is now extended. Right?
It's longer, yeah.
It's longer.
Yeah.
So if you're at the point where this is really common at the gym here, right? We've got a bunch of people who have graduated out of the novice progression for their barbell training, and now they're kind of looking out towards acquiring other physical skills, like growing their endurance.
Right.
And as they do that, they want to start adding some conditioning work, right? Yeah, that's great. But we have to realize that if you're going to continue to do the barbell work and you're going to add in conditioning, we just added more stress to the equation.
Right.
If the recovery can't be improved as well, something's got to give. Right. And so I think that's important for people to realize, if you've built this base of fitness and you're trying to improve incrementally on that, you have to pay attention to the stress and your recovery, because the further you get, the more you walk that knife's edge of overtraining, right?
Yeah.
And that's where
or undertraining. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's I think that's important for both beginners to understand how they're going to get to a result, and more advanced people who are trying to understand how do they keep themselves growing.
Yeah, I think so from a concept standpoint, when an individual walks into the gym, and whether we're doing endurance training, strength training, whatever we're doing, when they walk into the gym and they have no training background or minimal training background, okay? So let's say Susie walks into the gym and she wants to get stronger, okay? She's a beginner. She's a novice. She's going to get stronger every single workout. Every 24 to 48 hours, she's going to have a stressor, she's going to recover, and she's going to adapt. I can't tell you how many novices that on Wednesday, I brought them in and we're doing, let's say, a heavy program. Every day we're going up in weight because they're adapting every day. So there is no steady state. That's the thing, folks, you got to get over. There is no steady state. So if you're doing the same workout over and over and over and over again, you're not training. And here's the bad thing about that is that you could be stressing merely for the sake of stress.
Right.
In other words, you're stressing, but there's very little recovery and very little adaptation occurring. The stress may not be high enough to where it's of any significant value. And you're not even maintaining your fitness, because over time, as you age, the 10 general physical skills decline. Your body is declining, period. Our goal is to slow that decline down some. That's the goal.
Right.
That's the goal of programming.
You have to grow to stay the same.
That's right. A tree never stays the same. It either grows or dies. Humans are the same. We either grow or die. And after we stop growing, which is in general outside of adolescence, when we become an adult, we start dying. Our goal is to slow that process down. And the beautiful thing about strength training and physical training, when it's goal-oriented and outcome-driven, is that we actually get some of the benefits of growing again. And so, but here's the key. So the beginner comes in, and Susie, she's rocking along, she's working out. Every single day as a coach, I'm going to go up on weight or stress, whatever it is, I'm going up on her in small incremental increases over time. There's a stress, there's a day of rest. She comes back the following day, and she's already adapted, and we hit it again. She gets stronger, and we do it again and again and again and again. So we're going up every single workout. I've been amazed at times where someone's come in on a Wednesday, let's say, and we crushed them on Monday, and it was really hard. And they come in, and this especially happens with younger trainees. And you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm going to have to do back offsets. I'm going to have to do we're going to have to go to a different programming model, and they crush it.
Yeah.
They're stronger looking than they were on Monday with a heavier load. Exactly. It just blows you away. Wow, the benefits of being young, And by the way, youth is wasted on the young. So, but basically, so the beginner, they progress along. And then at some point, they're going to have developed enough, and the stress is going to be great enough to where the adaptation period of time has to be stretched out. So now, instead of getting stronger or adapting to whatever the workout program we're doing is, every 24 or 48 hours, it's 48 to 72 hours. So we're only able to go up maybe twice a week. And then that's going to run out for a while. And then at some point, that's going to hit a wall, and we're going to have to maybe only go up maybe once a week. And then at some point, that's going to hit a wall, and then we're going to have to go up once every 2 weeks or increase the intensity every 2 weeks. The novice phase is amazing because you get this constant PR forever,
right.
Until you hit the wall. And then at some point, you then have to go into intermediate programming, advanced programming, and then you go into more complicated programming after that. And so, but I think the thing to understand here is then, as Susie is getting stronger and stronger, or more enduring, she's getting faster and she's getting more powerful, whatever it is, at some point, then it's going to take a very large stimulus or stress because her threshold of adaptation is so high. It's going to take a very large stress to eke out a tiny little improvement. And that's that maximum genetic potential curve that Starting Strength shows in practical programming in the Blue Book, Starting Strength.
Right. Yeah, it's right on the cover.
Yeah, and so that's that adaptation cycle. And so at some point, that's what happens. And that's not a bad place to be because your fitness level, you're crushing it, but it is frustrating sometimes too.
Now, I think this is interesting. So we talked earlier about there's lots of different tissue types in the body that are undergoing adaptation. I think what we're talking about primarily in this discussion now is muscular,
connective tissue.
Connective tissue, and vascular, and
everything's growing.
I'm looking for fitness, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Cardiovascular,
right?
That's the main types of adaptation we're talking about. Right. But I do think that one of the issues with masters athletes that you have to manage is that when you get to somewhere in the intermediate phase of your training, your musculature adaptation is going to outpace your connective tissue adaptation.
Yes.
Right. And we see it all the time.
We talked about that.
We have a guy that's squatting, let's say, over 315. Right. It's just an average size guy, 5'10", 185, 195, somewhere around there, squatting 315 on his back. At that point, he's probably got a lot of blue sky. A lot of men will get to that point and they'll have a lot of blue sky in terms of their leg strength, right, and their back strength. But their bicep tendons start to hurt a lot of times. Right. And assuming form is good, they're running into an issue where they just have not been able to adapt to that load with their connective tissue, right? Because it's just such a big stretch on that bicep tendon.
Sure.
So how do you feel about that in terms of managing connective tissue adaptation?
Well, that's a podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast.
That's a podcast. I think, I'm reading right now. I'm trying to absorb everything I can on connective tissue health and the concepts of connective tissue growth and how connective tissue changes over time, how tendons and ligaments change over time with aging and also with stress, with training. Because of the recent episodes that I've had with that 65-year-old masters lifter and myself,
Sure.
I muscularly can continue to develop.
Yeah.
It's my joints. It's my connective tissue. So that's a podcast. But I think that the approach there is basically this. Like I say on the squat and the deadlift sometimes. Some people's squat is limited by their back strength, not their leg strength. And very seldomly is some people's deadlift limited by their leg strength, not their back strength. I mean, it's just, sometimes things are limited by one variable or another, and we have to figure out what that variable is and then learn how to train that tissue, that human tissue, to allow it to be stressed appropriately, recover, and adapt. The one thing we could say about connective tissue is it adapts very slow. And if you give it too great of a stressor, it'll get pissed off at you or angry at you. And then it won't adapt. What will happen is you'll get injury. You'll get an inflammatory process, a cascade that occurs. And so, I mean, I think that our goal here is basically this. You have to recognize that when you're training, when you have a program, that it should be progressive. The overreaching construct is here. It has to be progressive. The stress has to continue to increase. Now, you and I have been talking a lot because most of our population here at our gym is over 40. And we've been talking a lot about how to develop a hybrid program, develop a program because we're doing it functionally. We're doing it practically. I do it myself. I'm racing to nationals right now. I don't know when this will come out, but this coming Saturday is nationals with the USSF. And I feel pretty dang beat up right now. I mean, and you know how I was before the last meet.
Yeah,
I felt the exact same way. I felt less strong, less able, even though I did PR my press last night.
I saw that.
200-pound press.
200.
Yep. So I finally broke the 200-pound mark, but I still feel pretty beat up joint-wise, connective tissue-wise. I'm on the end of the spectrum where I need to be in regards to health and training. I'm actually fairly fit right now when it comes to strength and pretty conditioned still, but I might not be as healthy as I need to be connective tissue-wise. But I'm competing right now, and that is the trade-off. But there will be a ebb and flow to my training after nationals where I'll back off some of the heavy loads. I'll then start doing some conditioning, let my connective tissue rest a little bit, do some higher rep stuff, do some really full range or even deficit work, under load, lighter loads, and then have a heavier loaded day once a week to add some conditioning in, add some more mobility work in. And so it kind of ebbs and flows there. So it's got to be cyclical like that. And that's where we get into how we program things from a macro and a micro cycle. Short-term programming, 1 quarter, half a year, 3/4 of the year, 1 year programming, macro programming. So micro, small, little segments and cycles. And then what does the whole program look like over the year?
Right.
And that's the way training should be. And our goal here is that you guys out there are listening to this and you're saying to yourself, all right, where am I in my program? Am I a beginner? Am I a novice? Am I being provided enough stress that progressively increases over time? Or am I just exercising?
Right.
Am I just, because like I said, here's the worst. It's not the worst place to be in. I guess the worst place to be in is that you're not exercising at all and you're definitely not training.
Yeah.
Because
you're in a decline.
That's right. You're sedentary. And so guess what? Someone's going to come along and eat you or kill you, or you're not going to get to eat. All right. Eventually, that's how it works in the kingdom. But the next worst place to be would be that you are working your what off really hard, apparently, and it's the same all the time, and you're stressing your body, but you're not getting the results or the adaptation that you should be getting for all that hard work.
Right, exactly.
That's a bummer place to be. So, our goal is that you don't end up there. And a lot of people, I would say more people are there than are actually adapting and improving over time with their program.
Yeah, this is January, and everybody that trains at a big commercial gym probably is experiencing right now the huge influx of new people that are trying to get fit, trying to get in shape for the new year. And we all know
9 out of 10 of them are exercising.
They're exercising. And when are they going to be gone? February, March?
Well, an exercise program has a limited rate of return. Eventually, you're going to get frustrated because you're not really improving. You're not getting stronger. You're not getting leaner. Also, diet is what creates your leanness. It's what creates your way your body looks in general. You can't exercise off a bad nutrition program. All those things come into play, and eventually, you don't see the results. And I don't know what's worse, a human who does the same thing over and over and over again and expects different results, or the human who does the same thing over and over again and expects no results.
Right.
What's more, God, it just crushed me.
Yeah. And it makes me sad. You've got all these people who have made the step and made that first difficult step to change the course of their life and improve. But they're just missing that basic idea. You got to have a stress, you got to recover, and then you'll adapt.
Yeah, exactly. So Hey guys, thanks for joining the 40 Fit Radio podcast, and thanks for joining the 40 Fit Nation. If you want to hook up with us on social media, you can find us at 40 Fit Radio on Instagram. On Facebook, you can find us on our Facebook community group, which is 40 Fit. What is that?
Masters Community.
Yeah, 40 Fit Masters Community. There you go. I always get that one wrong. And you can reach out to us personally on Instagram. Trent is at Marmalade Cream, and I am at DL Deaton. And you can also go to 40fit.com and go to the 40 Fit Radio tab and find podcast and more information there. Man, we love having you guys. Please, please, please share our podcast with your other masters or anyone who you think would be interested. Get the word out there. Also, give us a review on the social media outlet that the podcast outlet that you listen to us on.
iTunes, Stitcher,
iTunes, whatever.
Overcast.
Yeah, because that really helps us, guys. And man, thanks for joining us today. We hope that this podcast on the stress recovery adaptation cycle, or why we get stronger, faster, and more enduring, will help you in your training program. And our number one goal is, if you're going to work hard, we want you to see the results. Have a great day.